Hello there. Welcome back to Casual Fridays, the podcast where we talk about bringing mindfulness practices into the workplace. I'm so happy to be here with you. It is not Friday again, and I apologize for any of you who were waiting for this to drop yesterday. It will be dropping today on Saturday. I'm very sorry. Schedule and whatnot yesterday just prevented me from recording, so really apologize. Please forgive me. It definitely has something to do with summer, craziness with the kids and stuff. So hopefully in the next few weeks, things will be settling down and we'll be able to once again get into a regular cadence of Friday recordings for this Casual Fridays podcast. But anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm really happy to be here with you today. So in Casual Fridays, what we talk about is bringing the practices of mindfulness and the skills that these practices cultivate into our workplace. And we do this for a very specific reason, or for a couple of different specific reasons. Number one is that when we, because of the amount of time that we spend at work, right, it's a great time to practice things that we want to, to extend out into the other areas of our lives, right? It's a wonderful opportunity because we're there anyway, right? So if we can, do our work while also practicing these wonderful skills of mind training and reap the benefits of what these mind training exercise bring us in terms of integration, in terms of well-being, in terms of the ability to see things more clearly, to be more productive, to be more intentional, right? These are all skills that are not going to only apply at work, but are going to extend into every area of our lives. And this is very, very, very valuable. And then, of course, there's the more obvious and more direct impact, right? Which is that when we bring the skills of mindfulness or mind training, as I like to call it, into the workplace, well, we're cultivating some very important skills, right? We're cultivating the skills of non-judging awareness, of being able to see things for what they really are, not through the lens of our own, our own priorities and our own worries and our own fears, if you will. We're also able to cultivate the skill of empathy, which is, in any workplace, if you can see the other's point of view, things are going to be more harmonious. It's just a basic math, right? And then it's also kindness and compassion, which are also, interpersonal skills that or soft skills, as we like to say in the business world, which ultimately all of this, culminates into what we might call emotional intelligence, right? Which is the soft skill of soft skills. And there is no organization in the world that will not benefit from increased emotional intelligence among the staff. That's just plain, again, math, right? That's not an opinion. That's fact. So that's what we're doing here. And I'm really glad you're here to do it with me. So the first thing I want to say about today's episode is that this is really geared, that this particular message is really for the managers out there, okay? For anyone out there who's listening to this, who's in charge of other people. This episode is primarily for you. It's for everybody because all of us can benefit from the skills that I'm going to talk about here, but we're going to talk specifically in terms of how we manage other people, okay? And what we could say is that this is about not micromanaging. All right. Now, obviously, that's a very simple way to say it, right? Like micromanaging, right? We all have sort of might have our own sort of view of what that really looks like, And so what we're going to do here today is we're going to talk about what the opposite of micromanaging is, right? How do we, what do we do so that we do not find ourselves micromanaging? Because micromanaging, again, it's not like this, specific thing that we're doing. It's an action that is born of a certain feeling on the part of the manager, right? Which could be looked at as perfectionism. It could be looked at as, the need to control, which is really coming from some level of fear, right? And some level of the belief that things are going to work out poorly, right? So pessimism, we might say, right? As well as fear, right? Those things are not the same. They're different, but they can both be present, right? And so the the task before us as managers, and I've been a manager in several different iterations of my life. I'm currently a manager in my family, right? I'm part of the management team of my family, right? And so we're all, many of us are managers in ways that we might not even realize that we're managers. So that's also a very important thing in terms of the practices that we talk about, to maybe sit and contemplate that. Like, are there areas of your life, even if you're not a manager at work, are there areas in your life where you are a manager? Right. And again, parenting, right? But even like if you have like people coming over to do work at your house or something like that, right? Are you managing that? Or are you, or can you bring the awareness of how you might be in a management sort of role vis-a-vis those people who you've hired? Okay. And then the next question is, what is your management style? Pardon me. Are you managing from a place of control and pessimism? Like, or do you believe that people are going to fail if not for your guidance? Because this is something to ask ourselves. And the reason why we ask ourselves this question is because the answer to that, or really it's the question that's the most important part. The answer itself is usually, secondary. But by asking ourselves that question, we place ourselves in the position of non-judging awareness. And from that place of non-judging awareness, that's where we can sort of look at our own behaviors without defensiveness, without shame, without, concern about how it might make us, appear to the rest of the world, right? And in this space, we're able then to with kindness for ourselves and kindness and empathy for the other people, we're able to maybe make adjustments to how we're acting that will result in more comfort, more happiness, and ultimately better results in whatever it is that we're examining or whatever it is that we're trying to manage. I hope that makes sense, but let's take that a little further and make sure, okay? So what happens when we do micromanage, right? And I guess one thing that we can say is how does it feel for the person being micromanaged, right? And that's where the empathy comes in. Would you like it if you had a job and you had a responsibility at work, right? Would you appreciate someone telling you every single thing that you're supposed to do and exactly how you're supposed to do it, right? Would that make you feel empowered, or would that make you feel childish, if you will? Okay. Now, of course, there's varying degrees of this, right? You're not every micromanagement is like, directing every single movement that every single person makes, right? I'm making a very, sort of comically obvious or outsized example here, right? But this is what the work is, right? The work is it's not enough to just say, okay, don't micromanage anymore, okay? Because the micromanagement is, the thing that you're doing when you micromanage someone is a habitual thing that's happening, right? It's a mental habit. It's not intentional. And so the idea then is to bring the intentionality to it. Okay, now, in order to do this, right, we have to first be aware of it, and we're going to get into that in a second, even though that's the first step. I'm going to cover that in a second, because the real thing that we want to ask ourselves is, what exactly are we afraid is going to happen? Right. And not necessarily to ask that as a specific question, although it wouldn't hurt. Right. But instead, what we can do is it's because the problem with asking a question like that, right, is that if you can't answer it, right, it becomes a source of stress. So we don't want to necessarily put ourselves on the spot to have to figure something out, right? Whereas instead, what we can do is we can look at the negative versus the positive of the action that we're doing, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that we can imagine, or we can, contemplate, we can, propose to our mind, what happens if I let someone do it on their own, right? Which is not to say, again, if the pessimism is coming through, we're going to say, how bad are they going to mess it up if I don't manage them through it, right? But instead, we can ask, what happens if I allow this person to own this process? And what happens even if they make a couple of mistakes in the short term? Ultimately, if they get to own this and they get to own it with my support and with my, sort of praise even, right? If I really encourage them and I support them from a place of a cheerleader almost, like, yeah, you can do this. I can't wait to see how well you do. Not that you're necessarily saying that to them, but that's how you're presenting yourself, right? Then what you're doing then is you're allowing this person to grow. You're allowing them to become the person who they are. You're allowing them to be authentic. You're allowing them to, that's why you hired them, because of who they are, right? So, and this is what we do. And this happens all of our lives, right? How many times the old story about, there was a show on Off-Broadway many years ago that said, I love you, you're perfect, now change, right? So we do it all the time in our lives, right? We say, oh my gosh, this is the most perfect person. And now I got to set to changing them somehow so that they align more with me and my ideas, right? And so the answer to this is to be curious about what this person is going to do, right? Allow for the potential that even though they might not get it 100% correct right this first time, they're going to grow into it. They're going to develop it. And as I allow them to develop and to grow and to own this process, they're going to do things that I wouldn't even think of. Right? Because when I'm micromanaging, I'm assuming that my way is the only way that this could possibly work, which is usually, not even usually, but almost always just not true, right? There's many different ways that something could work out. And we can't necessarily see those from our own perspective as the manager. We're looking at things just as we understand them. But this other beautiful human being that we've hired to help us do this work, they've got their own vision. They've got their own perspective. They've got their own experiences and development, which allows them to see it in a way that I might never be able to see it without them. And so as we allow ourselves to let go of this, this feeling of there's only one way this could possibly go, as we let go of that, we not only allow this person to grow and to heal and to become the person who we've hired them to be, and even more so than the person that we've hired to be, right? Like, we hired them at this stage, but if we allow them to grow and improve and heal and prosper within this process, well, now there's something even greater than what we thought we were getting, right? We're actually allowing our assets to become more valuable. And as we do this in an organization, right, an organization of any kind, even if it's a 2-person operation or a 5,000 or a 100,000 person operation, right, it's basically a complex system, right? And any complex system is comprised of or composed of, individual parts, nodes, functions, aspects, whatever you want to call it, that then have to work together. Now, the concept of integration, right, is built upon or includes the differentiation of each one of these parts, right? So you don't want each part to be exactly the same, just like you, because then you're just, well, let me not say that you don't want that but let me tell you what happens in integration is not that, right? Integration is allowing each part of this complex system to be its own differentiated and valuable part, and then link it with the rest of the individual parts. So in other words, if you allow everybody to be who they are and to tap into their own individual and wonderful talents and skills and knowledge and motivations, then what ultimately happens is that this becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Right. So you're actually elevating the entire, paradigm of your organization by allowing this to happen. Now, the thing that it requires on your part is to accept and to let go, right? Like you have to let go of the idea that people are going to do it exactly the way you would do it, which is okay. And you can accept the fact that along the way, there's going to be moments of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing it this way. But then trust in that process. And of course, you have to monitor it, right? You're not, if it's, something where people are causing a loss of money, of course, then you have to figure out a way to guide them without doing that micromanaging, which we could be, we could talk about boundaries, right? We could talk about how you're going to give them leeway up to a point, right? And we could talk about that in a coaching call for sure if you're interested in delving deeper into this, right? But the point is though that as you allow them to, yes, make some mistakes, yes, do things the way that you wouldn't do them, but then you as the manager have the choice and the opportunity to practice, instead of practicing judgment and pessimism over this, right? Meaning that anything other than the way I would do it is a bad way to do it, and it's going to result in a negative consequence. You can instead be curious, right? You can replace that judging mind or that judgment of your mind with a curiosity of your mind to say, let me see what happens. Let me keep an eye on it. Make sure that it doesn't get to the point where it's, going to affect my quarterly numbers here, but let me see what happens if I let this sort of play out to its natural conclusion. I want to see, not that I want to prevent some sort of disaster, but I want to see what does come out of it if I give this person this room. And in this space, this is where we can, because the thing is, let me really quick go over a real simple concept, okay? When we're looking at anything in the world, right? When we're looking at the whole world itself, right? Any part of it that we're seeing as an individual, right? There are three sort of spheres of knowledge of what we're seeing, okay? There's what we know. That's the first sphere. The second sphere, which is usually bigger than that first one, is what we know we don't know, okay? But then the sphere that dwarfs them all is the sphere of that we might call we don't know what we don't know. There's no way for you to know what you don't know about something. So the point that I'm saying, the reason why I'm bringing that to your attention is because you only know from your experience and from your perspective and from your understanding of the world and your business and everything else, right? So therefore, you cannot possibly know what this person might know, right? You don't know what you don't know about what that person knows. I know it gets a little silly, right? A little tongue twisting here, right? But the point is that this is your asset. This is the value of your organization is in the people with whom you have or whom are working for you. Okay? And so to allow them to do them, right? To be their own, individuals and allow them to have a voice and to have a decision-making, potential and power. You're then allowing that thing that you don't know what you don't know, you're allowing that to now become what you do know. You're learning, you're growing. And now when you see this stuff, now you are in a whole different potential in your mind. And so now you might come to realizations that you never would have tapped into had you not let this person do it their way, as opposed to your, very rigid, micromanaged way. Speaking of, complex systems, as we mentioned just a few minutes ago. We, of course, it's me. But anyway, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, the complex system, right? A complex system, when it moves out of its place of regulation, of well, functioning, it's going to descend into a place of either chaos or rigidity. So anytime you find yourself in a state of chaos or rigidity, well, that's the indication that you're probably exerting more attempting to exert more control on this than you really ought to be doing. Now that brings us to, what can you do personally? Right? Because again, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm not going to micromanage. I'm just going to sit here and grit my teeth and bite my nails and hope that nothing goes terribly wrong. And just, kind of in that sense, we start waiting for things to go wrong. We start believing that it's just a matter of time before the other shoe drops and all that kind of stuff. So instead, what we can do is we can check in with ourselves. Okay. Now, if you've listened to any of my other podcasts on showing up to life, or even the old Mindful Manager podcast that I did a couple of years ago, right? You heard me speak of this at some point. Okay. That in any one of our moment by moment in our whole lives, right? I tend to want to say in every experience we have, but what I mean by every experience is even when we're experiencing nothing. Right? When we're just sitting there doing nothing, when we're going to sleep, or when we're, driving our car, tying our shoelaces, right? These are not what we would call experiences, right? Getting milk out of the refrigerator, almond milk out of the refrigerator. That's not an experience that most of us would say, oh, I had this experience of taking almond milk out of my refrigerator and pouring it over my Raisin Bran, right? But in every moment by moment experience that you're having, and which is to say, as you're experiencing your life moment by moment, you're experiencing it in three specific ways. The first experience is a physical experience. It's your body, right? It's the ability to feel the tension in your body. It's also the feeling of pain, of pleasure, of excitement, all that physical stuff that happens. You're experiencing every moment in your body. You are also experiencing every moment in an emotional response. Okay, every single moment. Now, sometimes the emotional response feels neutral because, you're just tying your shoes, right? But there is still an emotional response involved. It's just so subtle that you don't feel it, right? But there's a satisfaction. You're feeling something. Trust me, you are. Okay? And then there is the experience of our thoughts. And what the thoughts include are, sort of a few different things, right? It includes both the, just the random thought that pops into our mind from here to there. We don't know where it came from. Just, whoa, man, I just had this idea, right? That's part of the thought process experience. So our memories, right? As you look at a Jeep driving by and you remember when you were, a teenager and you had a Jeep and you drove on the beach or something like that, right? I mean, I don't know if that's experience that any of you had, but maybe it is, right? Or you see a baseball commercial and you think of a time where you were at a baseball game and you had a great time or something like that, right? There's just associative memories that pop into our mind. This is also part of our moment by moment experience. But then most of all, or perhaps most importantly, the thought experience includes the narrative that we're all living with. Right? We're all moving through our lives thinking, I should do that. I shouldn't do that. That's good for me. That's not good for me. I really want that. I don't want that. It's a thought process, right? It's a narrative. That person's cool. That person's not cool. That person's really pretty and I really want to get to talk to them. Or this person, no, I'm not very attracted to that person, right? It's all the thoughts, right? So now in any given moment, and I recommend that in almost every given moment, right, we can become aware of these three aspects of our experience. So when you are assigning a task to someone, right? And you find yourself, again, well, it all starts with intention, right? So the first thing you must do, or the first advice I would give you, is to set the intention that as I'm giving this person this assignment, I am going to allow this person to fulfill this assignment by their own prerogative and their own motivation. I am not going to, try to control what they do. I'm going to monitor it, I'm going to evaluate it, and I'm going to make adjustments as necessary per my own responsibilities and my business. Again, if they're doing something that's losing money, no, you got to stop that. Whoa. We got to figure this out, right? So I'm not saying that you don't have any level of, of parameter or boundary here, right? But the idea that you can't control every single move that this person makes, otherwise you could probably save money, and get somebody who is less qualified, right? If you're going to do all the work yourself anyway, you know what I mean? So first, set that intention. That's the first step. And you must remind yourself, okay? Because remember, this controlling and this micromanaging that happens is habitual. So you're not, it's not something where you're saying, how can I micromanage this person today? What can I do to control them, right? It's just something that arises. And so while you might in a calm moment say, okay, you know what, Art's right. I gotta really be more mindful about how I'm doing this and allow people to do their own thing. And this feels great already that I'm doing this. Wonderful. Okay, I'm doing well. But then let's say a couple days go by and you're having a bit of an uncomfortable morning one day. Maybe something happened at home. Maybe you got stuck in traffic. Maybe you're just not feeling well for whatever reason. In those moments, we're going to tend to go back to that habitual way that we do things. And so now this calm, sort of contemplation of how Art was right and we should try to do this is now gone. And you're going to go back into your habitual, actions and performance. Okay, so, pardon me, in order to help yourself, I recommend Post-it notes. Okay, lots and lots of Post-it. I mean, not lots. You don't want to cover everything because then it becomes white noise. But put a Post-it note on your computer, on the corner of your computer screen, right? Something along the lines of, what it says is something along the lines of, let it go, maybe, or allow, or don't micromanage, right? So it's something very simple, just a cue to remind you of your intention. Okay. Now, when you find yourself in a moment where you are maybe micromanaging, or you're feeling like, like worry or whatever, right? That's where we're going to check in with ourselves, right? And it could even be when you see the note, right? When you see don't micromanage, in that moment, check in with yourself. Okay, first check in with your body. And specifically with the body, when you're checking in, check in with your chest and also with your face, right? Which is to say, am I holding tension anywhere in my face right now? Do I feel tense in my chest, or what do I feel in these areas? Okay. Now take a quick check-in with your emotions and really just ask yourself, are you feeling hopeful or are you feeling pessimistic in your emotions? Okay? Just very simple. Just ask that very simple question. Am I feeling, or maybe even instead of hope, you could say, am I feeling optimism or pessimism right now? Because that indicates that you're either on the positive divide or the negative divide of your emotions. It's not to say good or bad. We need both, right? But what is present right now? Because that's going to motivate the next thing, which is the thoughts, right? Because if you're in a pessimistic emotional state and you're feeling tension in your body, well, then your thoughts are going to be catastrophized and very pessimistic. You're going to draw the picture in your mind of failure. Because these three aspects of our experience are not just three ways in which we can independently see what we're going on. They actually exist in a causative cycle. The thoughts create the emotions create the tension then creates the thoughts. That's how it works. And so as you bring the awareness to this, and again, it's a non-judging awareness. That's the most important part, right? To recognize that it's not bad that you're feeling this way. It's not bad that you have this tendency to do things this way, but it might be detrimental to your business. So it's worth changing. It's worth healing. It's worth evolving and growing through. And that's not good or bad. It's just what is, okay? And so as we check in with the tension in our body, am I feeling tense? And now am I feeling pessimistic? And what's going through my mind now in terms of the story? Am I imagining that this person is going to create such a horrible disaster that, that I'm never going to be able to fix it? And then we ask ourselves the most important question of all. Is that true? Or sometimes I like to say, what if the opposite is true? Can I imagine a way in which this thing that the person is doing actually works out better than I would have done it myself? And this is not something that's going to be fixed in one time, right? This is a practice. It requires a returning to this, a continuous, intention and a return to the practice. But I promise you, the more you check in with yourself, the more you're going to start recognizing it, even as you're doing the micromanaging. That's the beauty here, right? That even while you're giving the person the instructions that is part of your micromanaging, you're going to feel that you're doing it. And in that moment, you're going to be able to, not at first. At first, it's going to be like, oh man, I just did it I just did the micromanaging 5 minutes ago or an hour ago. That's how it's going to feel at first. But then it's going to feel, wait a minute, I feel it as I'm doing it, as you do the practice. And then it becomes, I'm coming into this meeting with this person. How can I ensure that I don't micromanage them? That's how we build skills. And this skill is no different from any other skill you've ever built in your life, including eating, including walking, including riding a bike, learning math, learning a language, anything you want to talk about, sports, science, any of it. It was all achieved the same way. You just kept doing it and doing it and doing it, and you got better and better and better at it, which in a really painful irony is the habits too, right? The habits that you have now, you've practiced and developed them as skills. You did so unwittingly, just as all of us have, but that's what it is. And so there's no magic here. All we're doing is replacing certain habits that we have now, in this context, micromanaging. We're replacing that habit of micromanaging with which is to say the habit of clinging and controlling and trying to grasp, right? And we're replacing that with the habit of letting go and being curious and allowing things to flow and to be, and to take their own, form. And believe me, my friend, if you are someone who's resonating with any of this, you are going to become more healthy through this process. I promise you. It's going to bring health. It's going to bring well-being. It's going to bring comfort. It's going to bring happiness. You're going to produce the conditions for happiness. And right now, you might not even be able to envision what that looks like. And if that is the case for you, then this would be a good reason to reach out to me and let's have a conversation, okay? Because I was where you are. And I can tell you that being here is a heck of a lot more comfortable. All right. And a lot more successful, a lot more productive, and a lot more all the things that I hope to achieve by the micromanagement. All right. I hope this all helps. I hope it made sense to everybody. But again, if this resonates and you want to talk about this more, please, I offer a free session, right? Just email me. I'll send you the link. You schedule it, and we'll talk for 45 minutes with no strings attached whatsoever. And I can help apply this to your specific experience. All right? All right, so let's do that. All right, everybody. I'll be back again. I'm going to probably do a showing up episode tomorrow, but I appreciate you being here today. Thank you very much. I wish you well. Take care.